I found another Jon Cronshaw article. So I reacted to, he did something like evolution of fantasy tropes in which he didn't talk about the evolution. It's too big of a topic for a short article, but I found this newer article from him this year of March 13. So this Jon Cronshaw guy, he tends to be kind of like a he tends to try to be like dry humor, funny kind of thing in his articles. So like he has a style. So he's being serious, but he's not being serious. And that's like his style. So you have to keep that in mind. This is an article called The Underdogs of Fantasy, 10 Tropes That Deserve More Love. And I thought, okay, it's better than talking about worst tropes. It's better than claiming some tropes are best. How about the underdogs? What are some tropes that deserve more love that would be kind of interesting to look at? So, explore the depths of fantasy literature with our in-depth look at 10 underrated tropes that deserve more attention. Discover how elements like reluctant rulers, enchanted landscapes, and magical objects with personality can enrich fantasy storytelling. So, I'm hoping to see some that are actually good and interesting. In the grand circus of fantasy literature, certain tropes swing from the trapeze and take the lion's share of attention. There are a few acts that don't quite get the applause they deserve. Let's shine a spotlight on the 10 most underrated tropes in fantasy literature. What is this? Oh, this goes to his article, The Evolution of Epic Fantasy Tropes. That's that one I looked at, which could do with a big fat edit, but let's get into this article. These are the ones lurking in the wings, awaiting their moment to take center stage. You see what he does here? He does a thing. He has a style with his articles. That's fine. Okay, so since these are all really, really short, I don't think I can put these into sections. We'll see. Sections meaning the timestamps sections. Because if they're too short, like what's the point? But anyway. The reluctant ruler. It's always about the farm boy destined for greatness, but what about the ruler who would rather be fishing? This ruler ascends the throne with all the enthusiasm of a cat taking a bath. Meaning resistance? Their journey from I don't want it to I suppose I'll sort this mess out is often more compelling than any prophesized hero's tale. Example, please. Book, movie even. I don't care. Some example would be nice here. Can I think of any example? Reluctant ruler. I don't know. I'm thinking, I mean, I know like a reluctant leader figure. This recent book that I read and fell in love with called Senlin Ascends by Josiah Bancroft is definitely about someone who he begins as a headmaster of a school, so he is kind of a leader, but in terms of a more active leader, he was a bit reluctant, I guess, and he sort of fell into that role, although he didn't seem like he really wanted to, but not really a ruler though, I don't think. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I only read the first book so far. The ruler who doesn't want to be a ruler. I suppose I'll take this, but do you mean the reluctant ruler is supposed to be like a protagonist or antagonist. I don't know any books like this, so I have no comments, other comments. If you guys listening to this video have some examples for some of the tropes, then let me know. Is it a trope, though, if I've never heard of it? I don't know. Reluctant ruler. How is a reluctant ruler often more compelling than any prophesized hero's tale? Is that your opinion? I don't know. Magic with a price. Not the you shall not pass kind. The kind that demands a pound of flesh or a sliver of your soul. This trope brings a delicious darkness to magic systems. He has an article on magic systems. It reminds us that power often comes at a price higher than just a wave of the wand. The wave of the wand is not a price, but is this really an underdog trope? Because I feel like if you have a story that is like a dark fantasy with like demons or something, and that you summon a demon, it's always going to be a price. How is... It's not that often done? This kind of thing? Really? Is that true? Magic with a price? I feel like there's lots of magic with limits. And then going beyond that limit would be, there would be like some kind of price to pay. Like your lifespan is shortened or something. Can I think of any book like that? Well, even though I didn't like this book, The Star Daughter by Shveta Thakrar, I don't know how to say her name. Star Daughter, there's this sort of star magic thing going on, and in order for the main character to fully develop this magic, she has to turn immortal. In the beginning, it was thought that she has to become a star and live with the other stars up in the star world and become immortal, and that is sort of like the price. Although she began with a life as an mortal, and so she has family and friends down on Earth, so the price is in terms of like something that she has to, it's like her price. It's like it's a price for her to become immortal. Like it's not a good thing, you see. So that is magic with a price. Like other things, I mean, I don't feel like it's particularly uncommon, this magic with a price. Maybe it is an underdog, and I don't know about that it is or not. I feel like magic always has some kind of price. Maybe, I don't know. At a price higher than just a wave of the wand. As I said, wave of the wand is not a price, so I don't know what this sentence is. Yeah. Is it something? Is this a trope that maybe I want to see more of? I feel like I already see it, though, but I don't know. I feel like it's not that uncommon. Reluctant ruler is definitely uncommon. I don't know if I've seen anything like this, but is it something that would actually be interesting? Because some tropes might not actually be worthwhile enough, interesting enough. Like maybe it's done once or twice before, but would that actually be a trope then if it's only done like once or twice before? and it didn't really leave an impression on people's minds. Are you thinking about a specific book when you give these trope examples? Did you get this from somewhere? Like, where are these coming from? Because it definitely wasn't in your original, your other article, Evolution of Epic Fantasy Tropes. So where are you getting this list from? Is this something you thought of yourself? So maybe I'd like to hear some examples. Like, you were obviously thinking about some certain book when you were making this list. So maybe you can give these, like, some examples. Haunted landscapes, not the kingdoms and empires, but the landscapes themselves, forests that remember, rivers that whisper secrets. These are often mere backdrops, but when they take a more central role, they add a layer of eerie beauty to the narrative. I need examples. Haunted landscapes. Isn't that more like in the horror genre, where like the land is haunted because it used to be a mass gravesite or something like that? In fantasy, haunted landscapes in fantasy, is that more like paranormal fantasy? Because I can't think of any examples other than horror, but haunted. But how haunted? How? These are often mere backdrops, maybe, but when they take a more central role, like, do you have an example of what it looks like for a haunted landscape to take a more central role? I need examples. Eldritch Abominations. These creatures are beyond understanding, more Lovecraftian nightmare than fairy tale foe. They are usually relegated to the horror genre, but when they slither into fantasy, they bring a refreshing dose of existential dread. I feel like Eldritch Abominations aren't particularly unusual. I mean, okay, so they're not underdogs, I feel like. It depends on what fantasy you're talking about. Talking about adult fantasy or young adult fantasy or middle grade fantasy or what? Eldritch Abominations, I think, do appear in adult fantasy. I mean, I read Perdido Street Station, and I think that has an Eldritch, a couple, maybe 3 Eldritch Abominations, 4 maybe Eldritch Abominations. 3, I think, are the main ones. They are really incomprehensible in so many ways, especially one of 2 of them. No, especially one of them. I would like to read more books with Eldritch Abominations. I do feel that they do exist. I mean, but writing it in an adult fantasy would be different from writing it in a young adult fantasy. How would you, what are you thinking of an example? Because I need examples here. Are they usually relegated to the horror genre? I mean, there is a cosmic horror thing, but Eldritch fantasy, I don't think it's particularly unusual, but maybe it is an underdog. Not to say that I disagreeing with your article here, but I mean, I need to know some, like, what exactly you're thinking about. Examples in all of these. Fantasy noir, I don't know. Imagine the rain-sick streets of a detective story, but with elves. This trope combines the best of noir with the fantastical. It creates a deliciously dark cocktail of mystery and magic. I mean, that would be great. That sounds fantastically interesting. But detective story with elves. Definitely never heard of it. I mean, I know there's like a cozy fantasy genre that began with legends and lattes. So maybe if that genre, that sort of cozy fantasy subgenre, expands more, then maybe that can bring up some kind of detective story with like fantasy creatures. But is it that unusual? Yes, maybe it is. If you have like an example, that would be nice. Maybe even talk about, imagine legends and lattes, but with a dark, instead of a cozy fantasy, imagine it in the rain-slicked streets of London or something like that. I don't know. I always think about noir fantasy or something taking place in London, although yeah, because I read this book called Dodger by Terry Pratchett, and that was I don't know if it's noir, but it was definitely some dark elements, and it was a mystery thriller story, with, of course, Terry Pratchett's touch of humor in it. It would be interesting, I think, to have more to have fantasy noir, a detective story, but with fantasy creatures. I did try writing a mystery story with fantasy creatures, although it turned out to be a completely epic fantasy adventure in the end, because that's what I write. I can't get away from it. I try not to write something like that, but I just can't get away from it. The Scholar Adventurer. Forget brawny warrior. Sometimes you need a hero who wields knowledge like a sword. These bookish adventurers are often overlooked. They bring brains to the brawn-dominated genre. What is that one? The one about this woman scholar that studies fairies, Emily something's fantasy fairy something or other book that recently, Emily Wild, was it something like that? That's definitely, I think a scholar adventure book. Can it be done well? Yes, I think people, when they read fantasy, they expect the character to be like some adventurous something. How would that even look like, though? Like, using knowledge, but wouldn't that be a little bit boring? Wouldn't it be boring? Like, how would you make it interesting? Like, how would you make it engaging that some person who wields knowledge like a sword, how would you go about that if they're not going to have magic or anything? Like, you'd really need to find something, if they're not, like, if they don't have any magic, or are you talking about the Scholar Adventurer that does have magic, but they don't use swords? I mean, I have characters like that, but they're not scholars. How would you do that? I mean, maybe these tropes are underdogs for a reason, that they don't always work in certain places, certain contexts, and so they become underdogs because they don't always work. Can't always make it engaging enough for the reader. But if you're talking not about protagonists, like these tropes aren't just about protagonists, they're just tropes, then maybe it might work. Like if you have a side character who was a scholar adventurer, maybe that would work. or a side character who's a reluctant ruler, scholar, adventurer. I don't know. Put them together. The mundane made magical. This trope is where the ordinary becomes extraordinary. Think talking pots and spellbinding laundry. It's a reminder that magic doesn't always have to be about grand battles and epic quests. Sometimes it's in the little things. I think this already happens in many places, many genres, not many genres, many books. Mundane made magical. I mean, aren't magical books mundane made magical? Not saying books are mundane, but like a book about, like a book of spells, it's just words. I mean, it's just words, so it's magical because when you say the spells that they work or something. But the mundane made magical, like, I mean, these are really things that you have to try really hard to make interesting. I mean, maybe, like I said, that's why they're underdogs. They're not all that interesting, so people don't always use them. And so they become underdogs. I mean, maybe mundane made magical happens in middle grade fantasy more. Like, I think there was a movie, I don't know if it was a book, but it was a movie about some special pants or t-shirt or something that was somehow magical, and so when the characters put it on, that they could somehow use magic and make their imaginations come true, and then all things go out of hand. I was actually going to watch that movie because I was interested in it, but I don't know if it came to Japan. So, maybe something in middle grade fantasy. I think it already happens in middle grade fantasy, doesn't it? Like a magical pencil or something like that. Is it an underdog? I don't know. The villain's redemption. Villains, it turns out, can have layers too. This trope explores the gray areas. It delves into the villain's journey from darkness to, well, slightly less darkness. It's complex, challenging, and all too rare. Probably because it's rare, because a lot of people are like, why does the villain need to be redeemed? Don't redeem the villain. I liked it when he wasn't redeemed. So, like, you can, like, maybe make a, I don't know. It depends on, I think it depends on, like, if you have a story and where there's a villain and then he's defeated or captured or something. And then you have a side story in which we follow the villain story and find out things from his perspective. That's, I don't know if I'd want that, you know, because especially if I read the story first from the hero's perspective, I'm not going to like the villain enough to want to read his story unless he's somehow compelling. Like maybe the in the Grishaverse, the Darkling is viewed as a villain from the protagonist's perspective, but there's many times in the actual story from the protagonist's perspective in which the villain doesn't seem like a villain, or which the Darkling doesn't seem quite so evil. Like maybe he actually has a point here. So something like that, I would want to read or hear the story from his perspective. But I'm not particularly interested in reading, like, I don't know. I'm not particularly interested in Voldemort's background. I mean, the story from his point of view, because he looks like he just wants to rule the world. Or get revenge and stuff. I don't particularly want to hear if he had a tragic background or not. So maybe it doesn't work on all villains. But if I had a story in a completely different world and I'm exploring this world for the first time from the villain's perspective, after he's done the villainous act, so the story begins with the villain after he's been captured by the hero, and then we follow along the villains. I don't know about the redemption, though. would I still want to read a story about him being redeemed? I don't know. Unless he was already, like, it's not a redemption arc, but that he was misunderstood from the start. Would that be interesting? If the story begins in a completely different world, in which we begin with the villain having been captured by the protagonist, and then we learn what the villain had been trying to do, but that he kept missing. He kept, like, meeting these walls of misunderstanding, and so then he was captured, but he actually had a good goal. I don't know. Do we want the villain to be good? Because the point of a villain being a villain is that he is bad, or he is at least layered, or a great character in some way. Do we want to see him being good? I don't know if I would want that. I think I would want to see the villain acknowledging that he's a villain, knowing that he's doing bad things, and yet having some twisted view or idea, twisted views as twisted reasons for why he's doing the evil things, in which we can kind of understand. So it's not a redemption. Do you want your villains to be redeemed? Do you want to read a story about Voldemort being good? Like a layered character, like a character, if I've already seen the villain having layers like the Darkling, then yes, I would want to read a story where the Darkling is the protagonist, but I don't know if I want to read a story about Voldemort becoming a good person. That would completely defeat the purpose, his villainous role that he had for 7 books or 7 movies. I don't know. What do you think about villain's redemption? Do you want a book that solely focuses on a villain's redemption? I mean, when we're talking about redemption, talking about a villain's story is different from talking about the villain's redemption. Redemption implies that he did bad thing and now he's going to be good. Do you want a story where you read about a villain doing a bad thing and then becoming good? Do you want that? Would you want that? Like, villain's redemption might be an underdog trope for a reason, that people don't want to see a villain being redeemed. Maybe we can see a villain doing, but do we want to see him doing better? I don't know. Redemption also implies that the villain is alive at the end of the story of the protagonist with the hero. So if he's still alive, I don't know. I have some books that I've written in which it ends with not the villain hasn't been captured, but he's been sent into oblivion, like a different realm. So he's still kind of alive, but he's not going to be in anybody's life anymore. Would I want to see what it would be like if I would redeem him? No, I don't, because he's not pure evil, but he is bad. What he wants to do is not a good thing. I wouldn't want to see him. I wouldn't even want to explore what it would be like to redeem him. I mean, not redemption, maybe a villain story from a villain's perspective. Enchanted objects with personality. Not just a sword that glows when orcs are near, but objects with character, maybe even a sassy comment or two. These items can add a whimsical, slightly unsettling element to the narrative. There is a scepter in the Unicorns of Balinor that talks. So, I don't think objects with personality are completely unusual. Do you mean to have more have books with more of these. I feel like it works more in middle grade fantasy, because middle grade fantasy can be a little bit wacky and whimsical, right? So maybe these in middle grade, seeing more of these in middle grade might be fun, but young adult fantasy, would it work or would it feel too silly? I mean, I guess it depends on how you write it, but do I want to see it? I'd rather see talking cats, actually. That's me. Retired adventurers. They've saved the world, hung up their swords, and now just want a quiet life, but fate has other ideas. This trope brings a welcome dose of reality to the fantasy world. It explores themes of age, legacy, and the cost of a life of adventure. He has an article here. This trope heavily explored in Japanese fantasy manga. So, especially recently, there's so much of it. Retired adventurers being called upon for a new adventure and exploring the idea of age and legacy and all that stuff. So, to me, it's not particularly an underdog trope, but maybe in English books, it's an underdog trope. I don't know. Would it be interesting to explore? I think there was a book that, who read it? Who read this book? Jesse the Reader decided to do a series, a video, a reading vlog, where he read books that have tropes in the title. I think it was him. Yeah. So there is one book called The Chosen Ones, which explores a story about what happens after the chosen one's chosen adventure is finished and how they deal with like mental health and everything like that, on top of things being not completely finished afterwards. And so they have to, I think I remember it was something like they have to band together once again, and they have this pressure because they have previously been successful because they're the chosen ones. So they have to answer to this pressure of being the chosen ones one more time. And how they deal with that, how they work with each other or not work with each other. And apparently it was a pretty good book, this book called The Chosen Ones. I don't know who it's by. But yeah, it'd be interesting to explore, but I don't know. Maybe as a side character, but I don't know about a main character particularly, unless it'll be kind of like cozy / slow fantasy, probably. Apart from the Chosen Ones book, the book called The Chosen Ones, I can't think of any book. Maybe Legends and Lattes. Maybe Legends and Lattes can be considered in this trope, but it has to be maybe cozy fantasy, or that something from the past comes back up again. I don't know. The unsung tropes deserve their song. In the grand opera of fantasy literature, these underrated tropes are the supporting acts. They deserve a turn in the spotlight. They add depth, darkness, and a touch of the unexpected to the genre. So next time you pick up a fantasy novel, spare a thought for these underdogs. They might just surprise you with their ability to steal the show. What are your favorites? Okay, so I need more examples in here. I had some thoughts about some of the tropes. I mean, maybe if they weren't like the main features in the book, but like something going on in the background, or a side character or something like that, or I don't know. I mean, they're definitely unusual. I mean, I haven't really seen these, so exploring them might be fun. Is there any here that I want to try? You know, maybe Eldritch Abominations is something I want to try. I mean, I do have some books that are close to exploring that kind of thing. I don't know. Retired Adventurers might be something I want to explore, but I don't know how I would make it interesting. Like, what if they're called upon another adventure, but they sort of, like retired. So I don't know how I would explore that. Like, what would the message be and stuff like that. I don't know. Anyway, what did you think about this list? So the Reluctant Ruler, Magic with a Price, The Haunted Landscapes, Eldritch Abominations, Fantasy Noir, The Scholar Adventurer, The Mundane Made Magical, The Villain's Redemption, Enchanted Objects with Personality, and Retired Adventurers. Do you have any of these tropes in your stories, or have you read any books with these tropes? Either they're the main ones, or they're like behind the scenes kind of. Let me know in the comments down below, and that is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and Jon Cronshaw would like some examples in this article. That would be very nice. What else do I say in the end? Hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Please like, please subscribe to this channel, and your secret word for making it to the very end will be monsters. I don't know, just monsters. How about we change it? Let's make it just monsters. That phrase, just monsters. So anyway, that's it for this video. And let me know everything and thoughts, and word for making it to the end is just monsters. I just repeated myself. Sip of coffee at the end. Why not? Alrighty. Okay. So, the fox is out.